Welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited to hear the next installment of the series, and we're really excited to have Simi Peters giving it again. So I'm putting the sources in the chat. Everybody should remain muted throughout the entire class, and then put the questions in the chat, and we will go through them at the end or whenever Simi.
Whenever we take a break, right?
Yeah, exactly. So turning it over.
Okay, thank you. All right, hold on. Yes, it did work. The sharing worked here. Okay, everybody, we're starting again with something that we have been talking about last time. We had started last time, which is the end of Perek Lamed Aleph of Yirmiyahu. And it's an important piece. As I said, it is something that it is one of the sources for the Christian doctrine of supersessionism, which is that the Christian religion has superseded, or belief in Christianity has superseded the original covenant of God and the Jewish people, which, as you can imagine, is a highly contentious statement if you're a Jew. And it is one of the, as I said, this is one of the sources that the early Christian church used and later Christian sources used for this concept. As we will see, this is an egregious misunderstanding, obviously, of the psukim, but we'll also see it in the next perek. In other words, the idea that this concept could have been so badly misunderstood is refuted also in the next perek, not only here. So let's start, first of all, by reading the psukim, which we did last time, but it's been a week. Okay. Hinei yamim ba'im ne'um Hashem. Here days are coming, says Hashem. V'charati et Beit Yisrael ve'et Beit Yehuda brit chadasha. And I will make with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehuda a new covenant. Lo chavrit asher karati et avotam. Not like the covenant that I made with their forefathers. Biyom hechaziki biyadam l'hotzia me'eretz Mitzrayim. On the day that I grabbed them by the hands, or held them by the hands to take them out of the land of Egypt, asher hema heferu et briti, that they violated my covenant, vanochi ba'alti bam, and I mastered them, ne'um Hashem, says Hashem. Now this word ba'alti, the word Baal means master. It's also a word that is used for husband. A lot of modern Hebrew speakers don't like to use this word for husband. They use the word ish, ishi, instead of ba'ali. We will see that this word has significance for understanding why it is that, or what the nature of the covenant is that Hashem has made with Bnei Israel and its violation. We'll come back to this. The Malbim, I think, focuses on this word very sort of, I think, with a good reading here. Because this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Hashem. Natati et torati bekirbam. I will put my Torah in their midst. Now, there's another way to translate that word bekirbam, which would mean inside them, right? Va'alibam echtivena, and I will write, and on their hearts I will write it. Vahayiti lahem lelokim, and I will be for them a Lord. Vehema yuli la'am, and they will be for me a people. Okay. V'lo yalamdu od ishet re'ehu v'ishet achiv lemor, and they will no longer teach each one his friend and each one his brother, saying, Du'u et Hashem, know God, meaning you must know God, ki chulam yedoti, because all of them will know me. Limiktanam va'at gedolam, ne'um Hashem, from their smallest to their greatest, says Hashem, ki eslach la'avonam u'chatatam lo eskor od, because I will forgive their transgressions and their sins I will not remember anymore. Okay, so that's the description that we have here. Again, following upon the previous perek, Hashem says, you know, there's going to come a time when there will be a covenant that will not be violated. Notice, and this is important, right? The description here is they violated my covenant, not I violated my covenant. They violated my covenant with them. Okay. Here the Radak has a great deal to say. Hinei yamim ba'im brit chadasha. Now, of course, the Radak is writing in Spain in the Middle Ages. I mean, this is a sensitive subject. So brit chadasha, what is a new covenant? Chidushahu, its innovation is shetiyeh kayemet lo tufal, that it will stand, right? It will always be, and it will not be violated. As was violated the covenant that Hashem made with Bnei Israel at Har Sinai in this. Now, in this, I believe, refers to in the worshiping of idols. Remember, right after the Torah is given, which is the if you will, peak covenantal moment in Jewish history, right? Because that's when the Jewish people become the Jewish people. Right after Sinai, very shortly after Sinai, we have the sin of the golden calf. And that's the beginning of many violations of the covenant that the Jewish people perform over the course of centuries. V'omar, Ve'omer ki hanavi nibea Torah chadasha sha'atid lihiyot. And the one who says that the prophet was prophesying about a new Torah that would be in the future, lo ketorah chadasha shenitna b'Har Sinai, not like the Torah that was given at Mount Sinai, kemo she'amar lo kabrit asher karati et avotam, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers, v'ya Torah chadasha, and that's the new Torah, shechidesh lahem tshuvatam, he renewed their, shechidesh lahem, that he renewed for them. In other words, if you are a person who is going to say that the Navi is talking about a new Torah, i.e. a new religion, right, that God is going to innovate a new religion, Tshuvatam hare, amru perusho mahi lo kabrit asher karati et avotam. The answer to those people is, they said, what is not like this covenant that I made with their fathers? V'hem heferu et briti. They violated my covenant. V'zot habrit, but this covenant that I'm making now, lo yifruha. They will not violate it. Ki etein torati bilibam, because I will put my Torah in their hearts. Va'al libam echtevena, and I will write it on their hearts, shelo tishachach mehem leolam, that it will not be forgotten from them forever. In other words, what he's saying here is this: if you want to say the basis of these psukim, that God is making a brit chadasha, new covenant, the covenant meaning a new Torah, a new set of rules, laws, regulations, truths, if you want to say that, you have to read the rest of the story here, says the Radak. It's not like the covenant that I made with their fathers, which they violated. I didn't violate them. I didn't violate it. And this covenant that I'm going to make after those days, natati et torati bekirbam. He doesn't talk about a new Torah. He says the covenant means putting the Torah inside them or in their midst and writing it on their hearts. Okay, so it's not talking about a new set of rules. We're going to see other evidence of this when we go further. And then he goes on and he says, and all of this topic goes on as he explains and continues, that the innovation of the covenant is none other than its fulfillment. Now, what's the new thing in this covenant? It's not the content of the covenant, but it's the fulfillment of the covenant. That's the new thing, because what did we do almost right away? We violated the covenant. The innovation will be that we will no longer violate that covenant. והרי אומר מלאכי חותם הנביאים, and Malachi, who is the last of the prophets here, the Radag is referring to the last of the Treyasar, the last of the prophets of Israel. We're talking about the beginning of Bayit Sheni, beginning of the Second Temple period. The 70 years have passed, and they're rebuilding the Beit HaMikdash when Malachi prophesies. He is the last prophet, actually. Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the last prophets. And he's the one who is put at the end of Nevi'im, B'chatimat dvarav, in the sealing of his words, meaning the last of the prophets, in the last words, or almost the last words he says in Malachi, and it's worth reading. It's only 3 prakim, and the last parak is quite beautiful. Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi, Asher tziviti oto b'chorev al kol Yisrael, chukim u'mishpatim. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, whom I commanded him at Sinai on all of Israel, decrees and judgments. Meaning the Torah is that Malachi, only 70 years later, or a little more than 70, well, maybe 80 years later, is talking about, when he talks about the Torah that Yirmiyahu is referring to, is the Torah of Moshe and the laws of the Torah of Moshe. V'chol ota parasha atida, and all of that text is for the future, meaning that the fulfillment of Yirmiyahu's prophecy is not at the end of the 70-year period. The fulfillment will be at the end of days, meaning when Mashiach comes. Kemo shechatam, as Malachi seals the prophetic works. Hinei anochi sholech lechem et Eliyahu hanavi. Here I am sending to you Eliyahu the prophet before the great day of God, and he will restore the hearts of the sons to the fathers and the hearts of the fathers to the sons, lest I destroy the earth. Harei ata ro'eh. So here you see, ki lo tieh le'olam Torah chadasha. There will never be a new Torah, ela ota shenitna b'Har Sinai, but rather the Torah that was given at Har Sinai, kemo shekatuv asher tziviti oto b'chorev, as is written in Malachi, like I commanded you in Chorev. Okay, I want to stop here because this is important before we go on to the Malbim, and just see if there are any questions about this. Anybody wants to ask a question? Okay, good. So if you have a question, now's your big chance. Okay, so let's go back to the Brit Chadasha, and we are looking here, now we are looking at the Malbim's reading of this. Again, we're back at the Pasuk. I will make, hang on. V'charati et Beit Yisrael ve'et Beit Yehuda brit chadasha. I will make with them a new covenant. Lo chabrit asher karati et avotam. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of Egypt. The Malbim says something quite brilliant here. Lo kabrit asher karati et avotam. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers, with their ancestors. She'az lo hayu adayin muchanim el hashleimut v'hatikun. Because then they were not yet ready for perfection and for repair. Ki ze haya biyom hachaziki beyadayim hotzia me'eretz Mitzrayim. This was on the day that I grasped them by the hands, I seized them by the hands to take them out of the land of Egypt. Shehechazaktim biyadam b'chozek rav u'v'koach. I took them by their hands with great force and with strength. L'hotziam kodem hazman, to take them out of Egypt before their time. Ki lo hayu ru'yim az. They weren't really fitting to be taken out of Egypt at that point. I would say they weren't fully gestated, they weren't fully ripe. But I was forced, I had to take them out so that they would not be spoiled entirely. So the covenant that God made with the Jewish people at Sinai, the Malbim is saying, and there are lots of sources in Chazal that he's drawing upon when he says this, is a covenant that was made when they were not spiritually ripe or mature enough to receive the Torah. Asher hemeheferu et briti, that they violated my covenant, because since their nature was still prepared for evil, and they had a choice, and the covenant was conditional. They violated it in canceling the condition. Va'anochi, and here he focuses on that word ba'alti, and I ba'alti bam be'al kocham. I overmastered them, I overpowered them, I forced them against their will. Now, the Malbim here is drawing on an idea in Chazal, and an idea that I think is sort of implicit in the story of Matan Torah, and in fact related to the whole stormy 40 years in the desert when Am Yisrael keep doing one thing after another that shows spiritual immaturity. It's like they're not there, right? They're really not there. They're not ready to go into the land. They're not really prepared to do what they need to do in receiving the Torah. They kick, they scream the whole way. All right, one thing after another, one disaster after another. The Malbim is drawing on the idea here that, and this, by the way, also in Hosea, I think becomes an important motif. Excuse me, just one second. The Malbim is looking at that word ba'alti and hechezakti, right? You know, the idea of seizing them by the hands and overmastering them, and drawing upon this idea in Chazal that the Jewish people were not really ready to leave Egypt, but it was going to be too late if God didn't take them out when he did. In other words, they might have become so enmeshed in Egyptian culture, they might have become so entrenched in slavery that they would never have been redeemable, right? So Hashem sort of forces them to accept the Torah, and it's almost like the rest of Jewish history becomes a process whereby they have to learn to take responsibility for accepting the Torah of their own free will. That relates to the Purim story, and some interesting ideas there, that Purim is the moment at which the Jewish people learn to recognize the presence of God in history and choose really to renew the covenant. But this is the, I think, quite a brilliant insight that the Malbim offers here, which is the covenant doesn't change as far as God is concerned, right? But on our side, right, this lack of spiritual maturity or full consent, which comes from true appreciation and free will, that is not being pulled against, away from Torah, that is not present at Matan Torah. The ultimate redemption is going to be one in which it will be built into us. And this also here, the Malbim, I think, says something quite beautiful, sensitive, and psychologically deep. What is the covenant that I will make with them? I will put my Torah inside them, or in their midst. They will fulfill my Torah from the perspective of enlightenment, or not light, awakening of their sechel, of their cognitive factor or intellectual factor, until it becomes something natural to them that is found within them. And I will write it on their hearts, It will not need to be written in a book and with ink. Ki tiyeh ktuva al libam. It will be written on their hearts. Shahalev mitzayer koach habechira v'hamemshala asher banefesh. Because the heart symbolizes the power of choice and self-government or control that is in the soul. Shelo titorer etzlam bechira hefech haTorah. There will not be awakened in them a choice against Torah. Ki libam yihiyeh maleh michukei haTorah tvuah b'libam. Their hearts will be full of the decrees of the Torah, which will be entrenched, will be sunken into their hearts. V'hayiti lahem le'elokim tchila v'achar kach v'hem yihiyu li la'am. And I will be to them the Lord first, and afterwards they will be my people. Shedvekut elokut imahem. The cleaving of divinity with the Jewish people, lo tiyeh nitle od mima'asehem, will not be dependent anymore on their deeds, al yidei itrauta dilamata, according to an arousal from below. This is a Kabbalistic or concept of the idea that sometimes the cleaving of humanity with divinity comes from human initiative, and then there's itrauta de which is arousal from above, that sometimes it comes from the divine, from God. It will not be imaginable that they would choose evil. The connection will be awakened from above. From God's kindness, which will never end under any circumstances. So what the Malbim is saying here is, what's going to change is there's going to be a change in consciousness. The connection, our connection to God, is going to be second nature. Torah will be part of our teva. It will be part of our nature. It will be entrenched in our feelings. It will be entrenched in our reactions, and therefore God will be able to, as it were, connect to us directly and draw us to him. That's the Brit Chadasha. Okay. Any questions before we move on?
I have a question.
Yes, somebody has a question, but I can't see you, so you have to speak up.
So does that mean that there won't be any,
I can't hear you.
does that mean there
Hang
won't
on, let me make this louder, and then I'll be able to hear you. Go ahead. Sorry.
does that mean there won't be any free will anymore?
Interesting question. I don't know. There are a lot of different ideas about this. It may be that the concept of free will be of a more refined and complicated nature. There are people who say that, well, if we go back to Eitz Hadat, right? If we go back to Adam's choice to eat of the tree of life, he obviously had free will, but it is not of the same nature as the free will that we have, for example, right? So a lot of discussion of that. Perhaps free will become free will within the realm of good choices and not bad choices. Or another way to put it might be this. The Maharal says something like this: Kafalem harkigit, that God held the mountain over them like a barrel. He took away their free will at Matan Torah. They had to accept the Torah. They were incapable of choosing otherwise. He says when the revelation of God is so overwhelming, you sort of don't have a choice, right? And it's the experience of being taken out of Egypt, standing under the mountain. God is so overwhelmingly, manifestly present that you really don't have free will in some sense. It's sort of like denying that there's a sun in the sky. It's just so manifest. It's so obvious. Now, free will is very seldom that black and white, right? Still, what we have happening here is in the Messianic age, and I forget which Navi says this, Umala aretz deat Hashem kamayim layasim, The world will be filled with the knowledge of God, like the oceans the waters that cover the ocean. God, there'll be such, again, manifest presence of God in the world that really there won't be free will in the sense in which we have it now. You won't be able to sort of deny that. But you know what Chazal say about people who speculate about Yemot HaMashiach? They don't say flattering things, and I don't want to be of that number, so I'm gonna keep out of this discussion here. I have enough stuff on my plate to worry about right now, but we will not have free will in the sense in which we have it today. I think that's what it means. Or we will have attained a state of spiritual sophistication, a depth, a greatness that will make our choices very different from the choices we face now. Okay, I don't want to go off on that topic. Besides, I'm not a Machshavah Israel person. I am not a Jewish philosophy person, and I am not the right person to ask, but it's a good question. All right, let's go on. Yes.
It doesn't seem that they're spiritually any more advanced. I mean, this is a terrible time. There's child sacrifice among the Jews. There's everything that's bad. So why are they more spiritually mature here at this point?
No, the Navi isn't saying that that they are now. What's he saying?
They weren't then, but
they will be.
They were, yeah.
That's the new covenant. The new covenant is God hasn't given up on us. He is still hoping to have that fulfillment of his ideal relationship with us. Right? Let's go back. Let's just go back to the pasuk again, so we're clear.
Hang on. This new awakening.
Wait. Let me just find it so I can make sure. I hope I didn't close it. Hang on. Here it is. The words of the pasuk are V'charati et Beit Yisrael ve'et Beit Yehuda. Oh, here it is. Hinei yamim ba'im. Days are coming. They're not here yet. Oh, wait, can you see this, folks? Am I just?
Oh, we don't see it.
You don't see it. I'm sorry. Okay, hang on. No, I did it again. Hold on. Share screen. Then share the screen. You'd think I would be better at this. I've been doing it for ages. I'm not better at it. Okay, here. Now can you see it?
No.
All right, let's do it again. Share screen. Share. Okay, here it is. The pasuk starts like this. This is the important thing. Hang on. Hinei yamim ba'im ne'um Hashem. Remember, Yirmiyahu is prophesying at the, if you will, nadir, right? The bottom of the slope here, right? Here days are coming, says Hashem. V'charati et Beit Yisrael ve'et Beit Yehuda brit chadasha. And I will make a covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Yehuda, a new covenant. Meaning, we're not talking about now in Yirmiyahu's age. We're talking about a future, a messianic future. Okay. Mostly Yirmiyahu is not talking about the messianic future. Even when he has these nice prophecies, which are few and far between, mostly Yirmiyahu talks about Bayit Sheni, Second Temple period, when he talks about redemptive moments. But this is clearly referring to the end of days. Okay. By the way, I meant to point this out earlier. The word lichrot brit means to cut a covenant, right? It doesn't mean to make a covenant, and it's again the idea of sort of writing it on the heart makes sense when you incise something to make a covenant. Okay, let's go on, and let's go to our next source, which is Kalu b'chatzar matara. Okay. This is, oh, I went back to the stop share. Let's do it again. Share screen. Do you see it now? No.
Oh.
No, it's not working. Hold on, I'll do it again. Share screen. There we are. Okay, now it should be working. Yes, I see you, so you must see the source. Okay, very next parak starts not, now this is also important to understand, The prophecies of Yirmiyahu are not written in chronological order. The prophecy we're about to read, or the incident that we're about to read, it's a long perek, actually belongs at the end of the book. Now, as we will see, I'll explain as we go along. So let's start by looking at this. Hadavar asher haya el Yirmiyahu me'et Hashem, the word that was to Yirmiyahu from God, Bashana ha'asirit leTzidkiyahu melech Yehuda, in the 10th year of Tzidkiyahu, the king of Yehuda, which means 1 year before the destruction of the temple. Okay, the 10th year of Tzidkiyahu is like 1 year before the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed completely. Okay, it was the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar, and at the end of the book, we will come back to the historical description of exactly what happens during that period. So this is really at the end of Yirmiyahu's mission, if you will, to the Jewish people. And then the armies of the king of Babylon were laying siege to Jerusalem. And Yirmiyahu the prophet was imprisoned in the jail of the king of the house of Yehuda, the courtyard of watching. It's called the courtyard of guarding, meaning the jailhouse of the king of Yehuda. That Tzidkiyahu, the king of Yehuda, had jailed him, saying, why do you prophesy, saying, Ko amar Hashem, thus says Hashem, Hineni notenet ha'ir hazot biyad melech Babel ulechada. Here I will put this city in the hands of the king of Babylon, and he will conquer it. And Tzidkiyahu, the king of Yehuda, will not escape from the hands of the Chaldeans, the allies of Nebuchadnezzar, or his lackeys. Because he will surely be given into the hands of the king of Babel. And he will speak to his mouth, will speak to his mouth, and his eyes will see his eyes. Meaning he's going to have a face-to-face encounter with Nebuchadnezzar. And by the way, it does not end well for Tzidkiyahu. The last thing he sees is the murder of his own 2 sons, and he hears Nebuchadnezzar delivering this absolutely horrifying message. You brought this on yourself, because if you had just kept the rules and you hadn't challenged me, I would have left you alone. And he will lead Tzidkiyahu, Nebuchadnezzar will lead Tzidkiyahu to Babylon, and there he will be. That's where he's going to remain, until I visit him, meaning until I kill him. Nu'um Hashem, says Hashem, if you fight with the Chaldeans, you will not succeed. Now, this is a description of a political jail sentence. In other words, why is Yirmiyahu thrown into the Chatzar Matara, into this jail? I mean, it's so close to the end. It's so obvious which way the wind is blowing. Yirmiyahu is being treated as though he is preaching sedition, and he's a traitor, right? Tzidkiyahu can say to himself, I am protecting the people from sedition, right? I am protecting the people from these dangerous messages that Yirmiyahu is giving them, which is going to lower their morale, and they won't be willing to fight. And Yirmiyahu is pleading, right? Pleading. He's saying, look, this is what's going to happen if you don't step down, and if you don't let the Nebuchadnezzar, don't fight them, it'll only go badly for you. Yirmiyahu is prophesying exactly what happens, and certainly Tzidkiyahu doesn't want to hear it. Okay. So this is the setting of everything that follows in this parak. Vayomer Yirmiyahu, and Yirmiyahu said, Hayat dvar Hashem elai lemor. The word of Hashem was to me, saying, Hine Chanamel ben Shalom dodcha. Here, Chanamel, the son of Shalom, your uncle, meaning your cousin. Chanamel ben Shalom is his cousin, and Shalom is his uncle. He will come to you, saying, Knei lecha et tzadi asher ba'anatot. buy from me my field that is in Anatot, ki lecha mishpat hagula liknot, because you have the law of redemption to buy it. Now, this is the halachot that are being described here are mentioned in Parshat Bahar, right? After we talk about Shemitah and we talk about Yovel, we talk about the redemption of fields. You're all familiar with this story from Megillat Ruth, from the book of Ruth, which is that if someone has a field and they have to sell it because they can't afford to keep it anymore, the nearest male relative gets right of refusal to buy it or not to buy it. The idea is you're not supposed to let a field go out of the family, right? The idea is to keep the field within the family. Here I should point out, when I've taught this before, students have said to me, but Yirmiyahu was a Kohen, he didn't have any ancestral lands. I think the answer is pretty simple. There were ancestral lands that came to Levi'im through the female line, right? Like if a Levi or Kohen or a Levi married an Israelite woman who had her own property because she had no brothers, that's how land could come into Levite hands. And that apparently is the case here with Hanamel ben Shalom. Okay. Okay. And here I just show you the Radak here. Shalom haya dod Yirmiyahu. Shalom was Yirmiyahu's uncle. Achi Aviv, the father of his brother. Kemo she'omer, as he says, Hanamel ben Dodi, Hanamel, the son of my uncle, Ba'elecha, came to you. Shutzrach limkor sadehu, he needed to sell his field. He was in financial straits that required him to sell his field. And here he's going to come to you and tell you to buy it. Hashem says, you're going to get a visit from your cousin. Okay. And Hanamel, my cousin, came to me, Kidvar Hashem, like the word of Hashem, El Chatzar HaMatara, to the jail, right? And he said to me, please buy my field that is in Anatot, in the land of Binyamin, because you have the law of inheritance, and you have redemption. What that means is this. The Mahari Kara says the following. He's not on Safari, so I'll just have to tell you what he says. Had Hanamel died, the property would have gone to Yirmiyahu as an inheritor, right? Nearest male relative on the paternal line inherits for a man who has no children, okay? Ulecha ha'geula means, and therefore you also have the obligation to redeem the land. Meaning, any way you slice it, you should have this field. Ulecha ha'geula knelach, acquire it for yourself. The Edah Kidvar Hashem, and Yirmiyahu says, and I knew that this was the word of Hashem. Because when the cousin shows up and says, I want you to redeem my field, I want to sell you my field, right? He knows that Hashem has sent him to do this. And I bought the field from Hanamel, my cousin, which was in Anatot. And I weighed out the money, the 7 shkalim and the 10 pieces of silver. And I wrote it in a book. And I signed it. And I brought witnesses. And I weighed the money in scales. In other words, after he made the agreement with his cousin, right, to redeem the land, to buy the land, he takes fellow prisoners, right, and he has them witness the sale, and he even weighs the money in front of them so that they can witness to the legitimacy of the sale, right? His cousin just takes his money, but he wants to do it, very legally and very formally. and I took the scroll or the book, the writ of the sale, et hachatum, that was signed, hamitzvah v'chukim, which detail the laws and the decrees, ve'et hagalui, and the open document. Now, the Malbim explains that there were two. Wait, somebody's interrupting. Please, just let me finish this. There were two documents that went into a sale. There was, if you will, a receipt that the owner had that was called galui. It was open, meaning it was just a piece of paper, which was a receipt of the sale that he kept to hand to be able to show ownership of the document. And then there's the formal stuff that gets filed in court, or gets held in some sort of legal setting that has to be there for the public record. Okay, so that's the chatum and the galui. And I gave the formal writ of the sale to Baruch ben Neriah ben Marseah, who was also a Levi. He was Yirmiyahu's faithful servant and disciple. Another interesting person to talk about, but not now. Le'inei Chanamel Dodi, in front of Chanamel, to the eyes of Chanamel, my cousin, meaning I handed over the legal document to Baruch ben Neriah. Ule'inei ha'edim ha'kotvim b'sefer hamikna, and in front of to the eyes of the witnesses who signed or who wrote on the legal writ. Le'inei kol ha'yudim ha'yoshvim b'chatzar ha'matara, in front of all the Judeans who were in the Chatzar HaMatara. He's not the only person in prison. There were other people in prison for all sorts of reasons, for crimes against the king. They were his witnesses of this sale. And I commanded Baruch in front of them, saying, Thus says Hashem Tzvakot, the Lord of Israel. This is already a prophetic statement. Take these writs, these things that have been written, et sefer hamikneh hazeh, this writ of sale, ve'et hachatum, that has been signed, ve'et sefer hagalui hazeh, and this open document that the owner gets, unitatam b'chli chares, and place them in an earthenware vessel, leman yamdu yamim rabim, so that they will stand for many days. Because thus says Hashem Tzvakot, the Lord of Israel, God of hosts, Lord of Israel, yet again there will be bought in this land houses and fields and vineyards. Yirmiyahu's life again becomes a symbol for the Jewish people. At the brink of destruction, he's in the Chatzar HaMatara. It's not very long. He's in jail, right? It's not going to be very long that he's going to hear the destruction of Yerushalayim and see it and suffer it. And he knows it's coming. And Hashem says to him, I want you to redeem the land from your cousin, right? And again, he's a Kohen. We don't expect him, right, to have a piece of land, but he has a piece of land. Redeem the land from your cousin, make it a formal sale. Everybody has to see, it has to be signed, it has to be done perfectly legally. Make sure the record is kept in an earthenware vessel so it will stand for many days. And here, Leman Yamdu, the Radak points out, Leman Yamdu Yamim Rabim, so that these documents will last for many days. Ad Shuv Hagolah, till the diaspora returns, Sha'az Titkayem Nevu'at Od Yikanu Batim, because then will be fulfilled the prophecy of yet again houses will be bought. V'liyot la'od l'shivat hagalut tziva hakel liknot hasadeh. And as a sign for those who would return from exile, God commanded Yirmiyahu to buy this field. L'nachamem liYisrael, to comfort Israel, shelo yachshvu she'avda tikvatam im yiglu, so that they would not think that their hope was completely lost if they were exiled. In other words, here he is at the brink of complete destruction. And what's happening here? God is setting up a situation which will hold out hope, even for the people who are about to suffer within a year, utter destruction, right? But also the people who come back and can look at this document and know that Yirmiyahu prophesied correctly about what would happen. And that will also be a sign of hope. Because if all the bad stuff happened, the good stuff will also happen. Okay? And here we see Yirmiyahu's reaction. And I prayed to God after I gave the writ of sale to Baruch ben Neriah, saying, Aha Hashem Elokim, Oi God, Lord, Hine ata asita et hashamayim ve'et haaretz b'kochacha hagadol u'b'zoracha ha'ntuya. Here you made the heavens and the earth with your great strength and with your outstretched arm. Lo yipalei mimcha kol davar. Nothing is too wonderful for you, right? Nothing's too wondrous for you. You can do anything. Oseh chesed la'alafim. You do kindness to thousands of generations. And you pay out the transgression of the fathers to the bosoms of their children after them. The great, the mighty God of hosts, his name. Again, Yirmiyahu was using in his prayer phrases that have been used in Jewish prayer forever and continue to be used in Jewish prayer. Gedol ha'itza v'rav ha'alilya, great of counsel and with much many deeds. Asher einecha pkuchot al kol darchei bnei adam latet leish kidrachav ukefri ma'alelav. That your eyes are open to all of the ways of human beings, to give to each person according to his ways and according to the fruits of his deeds. Asher samta otot u'moftim be'eretz Mitzrayim ad hayom hazeh, that you did signs and wonders in the land of Mitzrayim that are remembered till this day, u'v'Yisrael u'v'Adam, and for Israel and for other peoples. V'ata'aseh lecha shem kayom hazeh, and you made for yourself a name like this day, meaning your name is as clear as day. V'totzeh et amcha et Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, and you took your people Israel out of the land of Egypt. Ba'otot u'moftim u'b'yad chazaka u've'ezroa netuya u'v'mora gadol, with signs and wonders and with a strong hand and an outstretched arm and with great fear, with great awe. You gave them this land that you promised to their fathers to give them. Eretz zavat chalav udvash, a land flowing with milk and honey. And they came and they inherited it. And they did not listen to your voice. And they did not go according to your Torot or your teachings. Everything you commanded them to do, they didn't do. And you called upon them all of this evil. Meaning, here I am, I'm in the Chatzar Matara. Tzidkiyahu was sitting on a throne very uneasily. Nebuchadnezzar has already laid siege to this city. We know how we got here, okay? Here, sololot, depending on who you ask, most people understand it to mean siege barriers that are built up against the walls of a city. Or it could be siege engines that catapult things. These sololot, whatever these are, there's instruments of destruction, have come to the city to conquer it. And the city is given over into the hands of the Chaldeans, were fighting against it, in the face of sword and famine and pestilence. I mean, we're dying here. That which you spoke, it came to pass. And you see it. And you said to me, Hashem Elokim, buy the field with money and bring witnesses. The city's in the hands of the Chaldeans. What are you doing to me? What's the point? Right? It's a farce. It doesn't make sense. You're contradicting yourself. This, in fact, is the reading of the Bible, which I suggest you look at yourselves because we're running out of time. Okay, I'm a good servant. I did what you told me to do. You said my cousin's going to come sell me the field. I'll buy the field. I'll do it legally. I'll put the documents as though they're going to be preserved. Right? What do you mean? The Chaldeans have already put siege engines against our city, right? They're standing outside Yerushalayim. People are already dying by the sword and famine and pestilence, because when there's nothing to eat and there's no way to get in and out of the city, there's plague, right? What's with the sale of land? What's this about? What are you doing to me? I'm not saying this to anybody else, right? We, from the perspective of history, we hear Yirmiyahu's words. The people of his age saw Yirmiyahu, going through the whole legal rigmarole, which to him is absurd, is meaningless. And God answers him. We're going to start this, and then we will have to stop and continue next week if we want to take any questions. The word of Hashem was to Yirmiyahu, saying, here I am God, the Lord of all flesh. Is there anything too wondrous for me? Thus says Hashem. I'm sorry, therefore, thus says Hashem, Hineni notenet ha'ir hazot biyad ha'kasdim u'biyad Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel u'lechada. Here I will give this city to the hands of the Chaldeans and the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Bavel, and he will conquer it. Uva'u ha'kasdim ha'nilchamim al ha'ir hazot, and the Chaldeans who are fighting against this city will come. V'hitzitu et ha'ir hazot ba'esh u'sirafuha, and they will ignite the city with fire, and they will burn it. And the houses that they will burn the city, and the houses that they brought incense offerings on their rooftops to the Baal, and that they brought wine offerings to other gods in order to anger me. Because the children of Israel and the children of Yehudah were only doing evil from their youth, doing evil in my eyes from their youth. Because Bnei Israel only anger me by the deeds of their hands, says Hashem. כי על אפי ועל חמתי הייתה לי העיר הזאת, למין היום אשר בנו אותה, ועד היום הזה, להסירה מעל פניי. Because by my wrath and by my anger, this city was to me from the day that they built it till today, to remove it from before my face. Meaning, the Navi says, in the name of God, God is saying Yerushalayim was always corrupt. We got to figure out what's going on here, right? Because this, by the way, also contradicts what Yirmiyahu says, which is that Yerushalayim was not always corrupt. I'm going to destroy the city from before my face because of all of the evil of Bnei Israel and Bnei Yehudah that they did to anger me. V'ish Yehuda v'yoshvei Yerushalayim. They and their kings and their ministers and their kohanim and their false prophets and the men of Yehuda and the inhabitants of Yerushalayim. Vayifnu elai oref v'lo panim. They turned the backs of their necks to me and not their faces. V'lamed otam hashkem v'lamed ve'inam shomim lakachat musar. And I have been teaching them from early in the morning and teaching them, and they don't want to take the message. And they placed their abominations in my house, in the house that was called on my name, in order to make it impure. And they built altars to the Baal in Gei Ben Hinnom, to pass their sons and daughters to the Molech, right, the sacrifice of children. Asher lo tzivitim v'lo alta libi la'asot hatoeva hazot. That I did not command them, and it never occurred to me that they would do this abomination. Leman hachatiet Yehuda, to cause Yehuda to sin. We're going to skip. We'll come back to these sources in a minute. And then the parak finishes as follows. And thus, therefore, we're running out of time. Okay, the rest, we're going to read this. Okay, we're going to read this after we have analyzed what we say here in Yirmiyahu Lamed Bet Chafaf through Lamed Hey, where he basically says, yeah, I'm going to destroy them. Okay, this part is full of, and I will bring them joy. The same way I destroyed them, I will rehabilitate them. Okay, we're going to talk about this next week, Bezrat Hashem, but I want to at least 2 minutes if people have questions. Hang on. We have to finish the parak. Any questions before we go on? Okay, let me have a quick why are we going to have the fulfillment of his prophecy, especially there's a good news. Well, it's not great news for Yirmiyahu when his nevuah is fulfilled, because it means the destruction of Yerushalayim. So on the one hand, yes, we know that Yirmiyahu is not a false prophet, but it's not good news. No, Yirmiyahu would have been happy to have been labeled a false prophet and not see massive destruction, death, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, etc. The Navi who did not think that Yerushalayim was always corrupt is Yeshayahu, right? And hang on if there's any other questions here. Why did Adam not have free will? He did have free will. It was not like our free will. That's a whole long another shiur. We say cut a deal, but cutting a covenant literally meant cutting an object. Could be cutting a deal is literally cutting an object. Brit Ben Habturim, you cut the animals in half, right? A Brit Milah is you cut the foreskin, right? Let me see. The film, who's in okay, we better stop. Okay, but next week we will continue with this topic. If you have other questions, again, you can send them to Orly and she will pass them on to me. Okay?
Thank you. Thank
See you
you.
next week, Bezrat Hashem.
Yes.
So, bye.
All right. Thank you to everyone who came. We really appreciate the time you take out and you come to learn with us. And we hope that you attend a few of our other programs. For instance, tonight we have our usual ongoing program of analyzing the Haftarah with Dr. Moshe Sokolow. It's profiting from the prophets. Very clever. So I'll put the link for that in the chat. And if anybody has any questions for me, I will do my best to answer them.